My sister-in-law tried to sabotage my wedding by telling my wife to leave me at the altar because she hates that I'm marrying her sister, so I messed with her face to teach her a lesson. My wife and I have been married for 2 years, but her family has never accepted me and even tried to break us up. At our wedding ceremony, her mom and sister told her that if she wanted to run away, they had a car prepared for her already because they knew she'd be throwing her life away on someone they saw as nothing more than a parasite. In that moment, my wife took her sister, who was the maid of honor, out of the wedding party. She didn't allow them to watch the ceremony and only let them be present during the reception. She told me it was more than they deserved for their awful comment, but she didn't want to let the food she paid for months earlier go to waste. I knew she was my soulmate the moment I fell in love with her, and I love that she keeps proving me right every day after that. We both thought that her family would be more hesitant to try to ruin our marriage, but we were wrong. At our wedding anniversary, her mom brought a man around my age to the party. I realized then that I had learned that my mother-in-law was into younger men and enjoyed being a cougar against my will. It was enough to make me vomit, but what she did when she introduced him to us made me want to die. She told my wife that I looked like I would let her have a man on the side because I clearly wasn't pleasing her in bed or else she would have grandbabies. Already the audacity of this woman shocked me, and because I had clearly been disrespected, I didn't mind disrespecting her. I loudly shouted for everyone to hear, that I had no idea she liked being a cougar and that it was wonderful of her to be proud of her fetish. All night my mother-in-law stayed in a corner of the room away from everybody else, and though she tried to make herself invisible, she was still bombarded with questions from everybody about her fetish. My wife and I laughed about it, and for once I didn't care that my mother-in-law screamed at me that I was a good-for-nothing husband because her face was red and fuming from how angry and embarrassed she was. If she stayed a second longer, I knew we would see smoke coming out of her ears and nose. My wife and I have always made sure to limit our interactions with her family because things like this always happen, but there are some events that we can't skip, such as her mom's birthday party. We were really hesitant to go, but my mother-in-law guilt-tripped my wife into attending by telling her this could be her last birthday and she'd regret it if she missed it. My wife told me that even though she had been really cruel to me in the past, she was still her mom and she raised her. Part of me understood and I wanted to be supportive, so I went along. Though it was grating as usual because her mom and sister told me that they still didn't know why my wife married me because they didn't think a male beautician could provide for their baby girl. I'm not even a beautician. I'm an esthetician. I was about to blow a casket until my wife held my hand and calmed me down. It took everything in me to ignore my in-laws' snarky remarks about how feminine I looked and how my wife looked so tired from babysitting me there was no way I could keep calm any longer, and just when I was about to tell them off, my wife quickly put them in their place and told them that I made her happier than she'd ever been and it was best to stop yapping about me. They clearly took her advice because her mom stood up to announce that she was going to cut the cake. Now I hope that my wife and I could just get a slice and then leave, but I nearly laughed out loud when I saw that the cake said happy 40th birthday. I don't know in what world my mother-in-law passed off for 40, but it wasn't this one. I couldn't have been happier when everyone called her out on it. They asked her how she wasn't tired of pretending to be 40 since it was her 5th time doing that, and others said her wrinkly skin resembled Jabba the Hutt. She laughed it off and said that just because she had wrinkles and an uneven skin tone didn't mean she couldn't pass off as 40. My sister-in-law quickly agreed with her and said, "Don't even get me started on these random polka dots on my skin." She said she hated the acne that was stuck to her skin ever since she was 14 years old and our nephews were starting to make her look just like her mom. I almost laughed loudly at that because usually they're always bragging about how good they take care of themselves, but in reality they look like they're decaying. When the cake was cut, I had the misfortune of getting the 40 because when my wife saw it, she asked if I would be willing to help them with their skin problems. My wife suggesting I help out her family was so crazy I almost called a mental asylum for her. However, my mother-in-law was eavesdropping on our conversation. She told my wife that if her multiple expensive treatments didn't get rid of her wrinkles, then there was nothing I could do since I was just an esthetician and knew nothing. My sister-in-law jumped in as well and told us that she had also been to multiple doctors who recommended a lot of acne products, but they never did anything for her. I told them it was because they were getting the wrong treatments done, but as soon as I said that, they said this conversation was a waste of their time and they went away to talk to other people. Honestly, I got fed up with being undermined every second. So when we went home, I hatched a plan with my wife. I told her that next time she sees her mom and sister, she needs to tell them about the growth factor sunscreen I told her to use months ago. I explained that since the sunscreen gets rid of wrinkles and hyperpigmentation, which are the skin problems my in-laws are facing, they will jump at the chance to use it. I told her she needed to mention that it will protect their skin from any future damage, but also reverse any signs of aging, which would make them look young and make their skin glow. I emphasized that she needed to tell her sister that the reason her acne products weren't working was because her skin barrier was damaged, but the sunscreen would fix it and her products would work. I also explained that since she knows the sunscreen works as a primer, too, and doesn't leave a white cast, she has to tell them that it can be incorporated into their makeup routine without messing up their look. That way, they're keeping their makeup perfect all day while helping their skin. But I told her not to say it was my idea because they might ignore it just to spite me. She agreed. So a couple days later, she asked for all of them to meet up for a girls' day. When my wife got back, she told me that they spent an hour examining her face after she told them she had been using the sunscreen for months and that's why she didn't have a single wrinkle, even though she was a little older than her sister. In the end, they both said they were going to get the growth factor sunscreen. When my wife was invited to another family outing at her mom's place, I practically begged to go with her because I couldn't wait to see the look on their faces when they found out I contributed to making their faces look different. While at her mom's place, neither her or my sister-in-law stopped talking about their skin. My mother-in-law kept telling us that her wrinkles were disappearing little by little, and I could tell that her skin looked healthier. She even kept pointing at spots on her face that used to be filled with hyperpigmentation and raved that it was clearing up. She said she never thought she could get an even skin tone at her age, which she quickly reminded us was 40. She even told us that people were more drawn to talk to her and showed us the guy's number she got in a week, claiming that she could still get it. I felt sorry for the poor bastards that would have to put up with her, but it was hilarious to know she'd be pissed if she found out I was basically her wingman. My sister-in-law, on the other hand, said that she used to spend hours worrying about her skin and how she used to cry in the shower because she spent so much money on products only for them to not work. But now that she was using the growth factor sunscreen, her skin barrier improved and her acne products were actually getting rid of her acne, and her face didn't look like a connect the dots game. She mentioned that applying the sunscreen indoors made a huge difference to her face because it always gave her a consistent, natural look and made us stare at her face until we agreed. And as much as I hated to agree, her skin looked like those Korean girls' glass skin. She said that she could probably even get a guy now, someone better than me. Of course, when they were done bragging, they asked my wife where she heard of the sunscreen because no one had ever recommended that to them and they couldn't believe something as simple as sunscreen would get rid of their hyperpigmentation and wrinkles. I told them that most people don't know that simply applying sunscreen could clear their skin. My mother-in-law scoffed and asked me, "How would you know that?" I said, "It's because I'm an esthetician." When they rolled their eyes, I dropped the bombshell. I told them it was because I told my wife to give them the sunscreen. They immediately called bees and claimed I was taking credit for someone else's idea since I'm a complete failure as an esthetician. I looked to my wife for help, and she told them that I had given her the growth factor sunscreen and that she used it for months because of me. They turned red in an instant, and my mother-in-law said that the sunscreen wasn't all that, but my wife immediately retorted that she actually looked 40 now and she could thank me for that. They begrudgingly thanked me and sarcastically said they were glad I was an esthetician. Though my mother-in-law will never accept me as her son-in-law, I know she'll think of me whenever she looks in the mirror, and that's good enough for me. A lot of you are asking what the best growth factor sunscreen is. At my clinic, we use the Sunray Growth Factor sunscreen and they are constantly sold out because of how good the product really is.